Part 39. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 395. In winter, the sun always rises later than in other seasons. A heavy snowfall comes quietly in people's dreams. The heavy snow covered the silt on the street, covered the tiles on the roof, and also covered the stained blood on the execution ground. The village was quiet, not a sound was heard. Even if occasionally a villager came out of the house, he would stand in front of the door and urinate, then tremblingly hold up his pants and go into the room. The village of Wangzhuang is very rundown, but there is a house in the village that is exceptionally well built. There are tall and solid walls and two stone lions squatting in front of the exquisite and grand gate. This is naturally the old house that Ma Qi built for his family. According to Ma Qi's official position, the old house has 3 entrances and 3 exits, which is much larger than the one in the capital. Because Ma Qi had to go to court and palace every day before dawn, he never moved here, but recently, people seemed to be coming to the house. Ever since the other party arrived, the whole Zhuangzi has not been quiet for a day. Every night in the middle of the night, you can hear ghosts crying and howling outside, and some people even see corpses crawling out of coffins. There were also female ghosts knocking on the door in the middle of the night, shouting to open the door and let me in, etc. In short, during this period of time, the entire Zhuangzi people were so frightened that they did not dare to go out. If it hadn't been snowing heavily now and it was inconvenient to travel, I'm afraid the people in Zhuangzi would have started running away. The reason why so many things have happened is, in the final analysis, because of what Gao Zhou did in Zhuangzi. Hey, look! At this moment, Gao Zhou was raising his palm triumphantly. His palm quickly turned black, revealing his sharp nails. He slashed the stone pillar on the side and cut it in half. Then, after the palms returned to their original appearance, a strange light came out of them, and he waved his hands forward, making Su Tong feel a strong sense of oppression. Until Gao Zhou put down his hands, the clothes behind him were torn apart, and a pair of rotten bone wings unfolded behind his back. They were obviously rotten bones, but when the pair of bone wings were unfolded, Su Tong discovered that Gao Zhou was bathing in the wind and snow. He has such a sacred and peaceful aura that people with weak concentration will probably kneel down when they see it. There's still this. Gao Zhou didn't seem to have enough fun. He crossed his hands, his aura suddenly increased, and his body gradually began to turn into corpses in large areas. Su Tong could clearly feel the terrifying aura emanating from Gao Zhou's body. The most bizarre thing is that Gao Zhou is clearly in the process of being transformed into a corpse, but the aura on his body gives people a sense of purity and simplicity. As a person with a dark constitution, Su Tong could clearly sense that the holy aura of Gao Zhou was forming a strong conflict with his own dark constitution. Half-step master. No, it should be said that he is a little stronger than a half-step master, but he has not yet reached the standard of a great master. For a brief moment, Gao Zhou suddenly restrained his aura, and after exhaling a long breath, his face turned slightly pale. Phew, no, this is almost reaching the limit. If you let me hold on for a while longer, I'm afraid I will lose control and enter the state of full corpse transformation. If I really go in, I will be in big trouble. He can transfer part of the power of the corpse to himself. The more he transfers, the stronger the process of corpse transformation. In the last script world, the mysterious foreign zombie, plus the half-step corpse Su Tong gave him Grandmaster, greatly improved his abilities. But it also caused his corpse transformation technique to reach a certain bottleneck. Gao Zhou had a strong premonition that he would face 2 choices next. The first one is to stay like this, using the power of corpses to the greatest extent, plus the zombies you have cultivated, and choose to become a player similar to the summoning route. The latter is to be determined to break through the step. However, he himself cannot guarantee what it will be like after the breakthrough, but what is certain is that after the breakthrough, he may no longer be called a human being. He told Su Tong his worries and choices. He hoped that Su Tong could give him some advice, but to his disappointment, Su Tong simply ignored the issue. Because this is originally a scoring question. Think about the certified player last time who was able to decompose his own body and transfer all damage to his body, even toxins. Can such a person still be called a human? Even if he is himself, with his dark physique, can he still be called a human being? What Su Tong can be sure of is that there must be one of the standards for certified players, with 3 words written on it: non-human. So the answer is already obvious: as long as they are a player, non-humanity is a process they must go through. Perhaps one day, they can return to their true nature, but that is just to make themselves look like one person. Gao Zhou knew these truths very well, he was just still struggling. Well, to put it bluntly, this is hypocrisy. Although I am a qualified doctor, I am by no means a psychiatrist and cannot cure this thing. Stop talking nonsense. You haven't stayed here long enough. Get ready and come back with me. Gao Zhou's strength has greatly increased, and he can serve as his helper. Okay. You can get whatever you want in this place. There are just a few chickens. I almost vomited after eating them. By the way, how are you studying the corpse in the box? The corpse Su Tong mentioned was the corpse escorted by the group of bodyguards when he came back from Lianshan. It could speak and even had independent thinking, but it was not a zombie. Well, I'm just about to have a chat with you. This corpse is very interesting. I can't explain it clearly in a sentence or two. I'll tell you slowly on our way back. While the two were talking, Gao Zhou had already packed up his things. The snow outside happened to stop and he walked out to take a look. Some children had begun running out of their homes and playing in the snow on the streets of the village. Looking around, you can see a vast expanse of white mist in the distance, and smoke rising from every chimney. This harmonious picture may no longer be seen in reality. Huh. At this time, Su Tong pricked up his ears and looked toward the west outside the village. That's the sound of a train. Gao Zhou obviously noticed the sound in the distance, but there seemed to be no train nearby. It is said that foreigners built a steam train station in Tianjin, but the tracks have not yet had time to extend to the capital, but the sound of the train is indeed getting closer. Woo! A giant steel beast with billowing steam appeared in their sight. Monster, the villagers screamed and fled in all directions. The giant steel beast was billowing white smoke and making a sound of movement, completely ignoring the snowy and slippery ground along the way. The huge wheels dug 2 deep trenches into the ground. Is this a train or a tank? It's so exaggerated. Gao Zhou stared at the giant steel beast approaching in front of him with wide eyes, even though he knew that the use of steam engines by foreigners in this era had reached a level beyond reality. But when he saw such a huge steel beast for the first time, Gao Zhou couldn't help being surprised. The giant beast slowly stopped in front of the village. A stream of warm water vapor gushes out from the fumaroles on both sides, blowing the surrounding snowflakes into bits of icy water mist, and even the snow on the ground melts. Click, click, click. The heavy metal door slowly opened. Under the thick steam, a woman stepped out of the steam car first. Blonde hair and a body as strong as a bear, enough to put muscular tough guys like Schwarzenegger to shame. This couldn't help but remind Su Tong of Zerya's appearance in a certain game in real life. But compared to the woman's tall and majestic figure, Su Tong and Gao Zhou focused more on the metal gloves raised on the woman's arms. Kaka, squeak. The black gears are rotating rapidly on it, and a delicate silver cross gyroscope can be seen on the back of the glove, which is always rotating rapidly. Such an alternative punk machine style is really eye-opening. When the woman saw Su Tong and Gao Zhou staring at her intently, she raised her head proudly and raised the corners of her mouth with a bit of disdain. In her eyes, she could crush these 2 skinny yellow-skinned monkeys to death with just one finger. But today's protagonist is obviously not her, So Chana naturally stands aside, waiting for the protagonist to appear. What is unexpected is that the person who walked out of the steam car was a white-haired old man. The old man was covered in a dark red priest's robe. A sapphire as big as a cat's eye on the silver cross reflected a kind of magic. Strange colored light. The old man got out of the car and looked at Su Tong and Gao Zhou with his blue eyes, making both of them feel a strong sense of oppression at the same time. It was obvious that this old man's strength was also unfathomable. However, while the two were surprised, the old man also had a strange look in his eyes. It seemed that few people could look him directly in the eyes like this. What made him even more curious was why he felt a trace of familiarity on that short and thin man. Hello, mysterious Eastern nobles, please allow me to make a brief introduction. As the Bishop of the Holy See Illumination Propagation Society, Anratat, I am very happy to meet you two in this place. The old priest spoke loose Chinese and introduced himself to Su Tong. Why are you so polite? It's not because of the clothes Su Tong wears. As the only son of Ma Chi and a famous dandy in the capital, Su Tong's clothes are made of fine silk, with gold rims on the cuffs and even boots, inlaid with jade buttons. As an old priest who knew China very well, Onlitate knew very well that in the strict rules of the Datong dynasty, those who could wear such clothes were definitely nobles. The nobles were precisely the main targets of his preaching. As an excellent evangelist, Onlitat has prepared a set of irresistible words and an exquisite gift. I believe it must be a great surprise for these barbaric yellow-skinned monkeys. You will be happy to submit to God's guidance. However, just when Onlitate was about to speak, Su Tong had already stepped forward, elegantly put his hands flat on his chest, bowed slightly, and spoke to him in fluent English. Welcome, Lord Bishop. Under the guidance of God, I have been waiting for you here for a long time. Your arrival has added a new flavor to this place. Oh, what does it smell like? Anratat was surprised that the other party could speak his native language fluently, and his standard gentlemanly etiquette was perfect. If it weren't for his skin color and hair, he even had the illusion that he was back in London. Su Tong lowered his head and stared directly at the ring on Onlitat's finger that shone with the divine aura. He quickly covered up the greed flowing from his eyes, that is naturally the smell of God. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 396. The roaring train headed all the way towards the capital. I am deeply touched by your generosity, but I deeply sympathize with your experience. If you are willing, I can hold a spiritual ceremony. Although it cannot change your physique, it can completely reduce the impact it has on you. Negative effects. On the train, Su Tong tearfully stated that he had been cursed by the devil, but he had never succumbed to the devil's power and had been trying his best to fight. Onlitat originally didn't believe this statement. But when Su Tong read out the name that made the Vatican tremble, Onlitat couldn't help but not believe it. Satan Lilith. That is the daughter of Satan, and it is the taboo that the Holy See of Light is least willing to mention. A terrible nightmare. How does an Easterner who has never stepped out of this land know this terrible name? By the great God of Light, I dare to swear that I have searched all over the world for monks and Taoist priests who claim to be extraordinary, but no one can save me. It was not until the moment I walked into the church that I felt the hope of salvation. But making up stories always requires reversal, but this sentence made Onlitat's heart suddenly rise again. But those damn stupid bitches. Su Tong paused here, looked at Chana, a woman who looked like a bear, and added, please forgive my wording, but believe me, this sentence is absolutely correct including you. Chana nodded, not noticing at all that the corner of Gao Zhou's mouth, who was sitting next to him, was curling up so much that he could no longer suppress it. She squinted at Chana's still very useful look, and was already complaining crazily in her heart, of course not you, this body of gata meat cannot be called a woman at all. Just listen to Su Tong continue, they burned the church, burned everything, and even killed the kind priest. Amen. Unlitate fell silent. The capital is the capital of this country, and it is also the center of culture. He just received the news some time ago that a church in the capital that was doing well was burned down, and even the priest who presided over the church disappeared mysteriously. So he hurriedly brought his assistants here to rebuild the church. On the way here, he was still worried about how to raise funds for the church. Now, all problems are solved. It's just that, there are new problems. Don't worry, after the church is established, I will personally conduct a purification ceremony for you to expel the evil power from you. Unlitate comforted Su Tong. But this is obviously not Su Tong's purpose. No, 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 you may have misunderstood me. The church's funds are not a problem at all. I can build you a bigger and more splendid church. This is 100,000 taels of silver note, which is enough to show my love for God. Pious. A brand new banknote was taken out by Su Tong and placed on the table. Anratat looked at the numbers above and his breathing became rapid. He had been in this magical country for a long time. Naturally, you can tell whether a banknote is genuine or fake. 100,000 taels of silver, this huge amount of money alone is enough to rebuild the church, and there is even a surplus. But Su Tong didn't take his hands off the banknote. Just like when he told a story, there was always another sentence at the end. But, I can't wait any longer. I have nightmares every night, dreaming that the woman threw me into the oil pan and tortured me repeatedly, so I need something that can make me sleep peacefully, such as something that contains divine power. Treasure. Su Tong said and glanced at the ring on Unlitat's finger. Finally exposed his foxtail. Unlitate followed Su Tong's gaze and noticed the ring on his finger, and his expression changed instantly. This ring is a sacred ring that symbolizes the authority of the bishop. It is said to be a tear of an angel. Naturally, it is impossible to give it to the other party. Ahem, what about this? Unlitate put his other hand on the ring in embarrassment and coughed twice, as if he was still thinking about how to deal with it. However, Su Tong turned his attention to the blue gleaming cross on Unlitat's chest. The meaning is obvious. If you don't give a ring, a cross will do. But this cross is the sacred object that Unlitate taught and preached. Without it, Unlitate would not even be able to perform a serious prayer. Seeing Unlitate's fussing look, Gao Zhou couldn't help but started to sing the double act with Su Tong. What do you mean, sir? This won't work and that won't work either. We're pouring real money into it. Why is it so hard for you to help us? Master, I don't think they really want to help us. Let's go. Well, foreign monk, go and find out who my young master is. If he is unhappy in the entire capital, no one will be able to feel better. Shut up. Su Tong interrupted Gao Zhou's words, sighed, and continued to speak to Unlitate in fluent English. Some time ago, something happened in the palace. Now the court is very disgusted with foreign affairs. At this time, if you want to stay in the capital, rebuilding the church. These words were already a bit threatening, but Su Tong was not worried at all that Anratat would fall out. If you are not good at literature, then you can do martial arts. I have said all the good things about you, but you still haven't given me your treasure obediently. You are still waiting to build a church. When your church is built, I will be dragged into the dark room by the eldest princess and squeezed dry. What do you mean by this? Channa stood up slowly, her burly figure, like a big mountain, giving people a strong sense of oppression. It's a pity that Su Tong is not interested in her exaggerated biceps at all. The meaning is very simple: those who follow me will prosper, those who go against me will perish. Su Tong said to Channa in Chinese very rudely. Anratat frowned, anger already showing in his eyes. If he could take action right now and beat this ignorant villain in front of him into a handful of ashes. But this is not a sensible thing to do. On the way here, he did see an unprecedented resistance to the westernization movement, which was not a happy thing for missionaries. The atmosphere seemed to have turned cold at this time. At this time, the steam car slowly stopped. It turned out that the car had entered the gate of the capital, but was blocked by soldiers. The driver in charge ran over and explained to Anratad. Su Tong put down the teacup in his hand and motioned to the driver to open the window. Then I poked my head out to take a look and was happy. This is not Zhang Shenling. The last time we said goodbye, I didn't expect to see each other so soon. When I saw Su Tong, an acquaintance, a smile appeared on his face. Zhang Shenling obviously noticed Su Tong, and the two of them met each other. Zhang Shenling was stunned immediately, and he was still wondering, why is he everywhere? In his days, Su Tong had already started a classic Chinese curse, greeting the 18 generations of women led by Zhang Shen. Soon, the door was reopened, Su Tong returned to his seat, picked up the cup of coffee again, and said seriously, "Father Unlitate, I am not trying to make things difficult for you. No matter what, I need God's guidance and protection. Maybe this is the meaning of our encounter. Even if you are not willing to help me, I will still be happy to donate this money to you. It's just that I'm worried that I may not live to see you come to conduct worship services." As he spoke, Su Tong stood up and said goodbye with regret on his face, and walked out of the car with Gao Zhou. Unlitate was stunned for a while after hearing this, and looked at the 100,000 tael silver note on the table. He picked up the silver note with a particularly complicated expression and silently put it into his pocket. 100,000 taels, 100,000 taels, are you just like this, wasted? After getting out of the car, Gao Zhou said with a look of disbelief. It was obvious that Unlitate was about to give in. As long as Su Tong was a little tougher, things would be done. But at this time, Su Tong suddenly chose to leave, which Gao Zhou couldn't understand. "Don't worry, just wait." Su Tong seemed to be very patient, but his fingers couldn't help but rub together. "Wait, what are you waiting for, you? Wait a minute." Channa's shout came from behind. Su Tong raised his brows, turned around, and saw Channa stepping forward and handing the ring to Su Tong's hand. "Mr. Bishop Unlitate asked me to tell you, this thing belongs to you, and he hopes to gain your friendship." The ring fell on Su Tong's hand, and Su Tong immediately threw it into the props book. "Please tell Bishop Unlitate that if there is anything you can't handle in the capital, just tell him that you are my friend, Ma Hongwen." What Su Tong didn't know was that it was because of these words that Archbishop Unlitate was almost beaten to death by the people in the slums with feces and rotten eggs. But these are things for later. Looking at the shining ring in the props book, Su Tong couldn't hold back the ecstasy in his heart. It was just a try. He never thought that Unlitate would really use this ring. Ring to yourself. The function of this ring is just a simple shield of holy words and an increase in sacred damage. But for Su Tong, he doesn't value the function of this ring at all. What he needs is a medium to allow him to break through in advance. The opportunity of the Grand Master. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 397. 100,000 taels of silver notes were exchanged for a ring. Maybe this is not a good deal, but for me, it is definitely worth it. Because it is impossible for him to return to reality with 100,000 taels of silver, and the prop book does not have that much space to store the silver for himself. If he goes back with a silver note, that thing may not even be worth 5,000 yuan in reality. The most important thing is, what are you going to do with so much money? Although it is processed into silver foil, wouldn't gold foil be better? In contrast, a ring can give you the opportunity to become a Grand Master in advance, which is worth more than 100,000 taels. After watching the steam car slowly drive into the foreigner area, Su Tong was not in a hurry to go back and took Gao Zhou to have a good meal first. While eating, Gao Zhou chatted with Su Tong about the corpse in the box. It's a very strange corpse. Gao Zhou is sure that this guy is a bug. Although it is a corpse, during Gao Zhou's dissection, he found that although this guy's flesh and blood has been rotting, it has also been growing again. It's just growth. The process is too slow and difficult to detect without careful observation. You mean, he's not dead? No, he is completely dead, but death is not over. If we can give him some energy, he may be reborn quickly. Gao Zhou was ecstatic about this discovery. If he can unlock the secret, maybe he can reach the state, and he can still maintain the characteristics of a living person even if he transforms into a corpse. Of course, all this must be done after his wife is pregnant and is sure to be a boy with a target. Gao Zhou remembered that he still carried the great responsibility of the Gao family's blood on his shoulders, and he suddenly felt that the responsibility on his shoulders was much heavier. After the two of them had eaten and drank enough, they went to find Wang Zheng. This guy has been practicing there for so long, it's time to let him come out to work. When they arrived at the place, Su Tong found that both Wu Qiudong and Wang Zheng were missing. These two couldn't have eloped, right? Gao Zhou went into the house and searched around, but couldn't find any trace of the two of them, and he couldn't help complaining in his heart. Su Tong took a look at the time, and first used the plum blossom to calculate the hexagram. Judging from the hexagram, it was unrealistic for the two of them to wait here for Wang Zheng to come back. However, it was not difficult to find Wang Zheng. Su Tong activated the life icon, lit a wisp of incense and merit, and silently recited Wang Zheng's name in his heart. Wang Zheng was soon found by a pool. It's outside the city, let's go take a look. Not knowing what the two were up to, Su Tong simply took Gao Zhou and rushed over to take a look. At this moment, there was a vast expanse of white snow outside the city, and the two of them walked forward with shallow and deep footprints. The slippery ground made it extremely difficult for the two of them to walk on it, and Gao Zhou even fell. When he looked up, he saw Su Tong grinning. "Why are you laughing?" Gao Zhou asked. "Don't you think it's better to be a human being? Isn't that the case now?" Gao Zhou was stunned for a moment and didn't understand what he meant. Su Tong stretched out his hand to pull him up. "Only people can slip in the snow. Have you ever seen that god or monster fall down?" This. Gao Zhou understood and immediately laughed, patting the snow on his butt. "That's true. Birth, old age, illness, and death are all human beings, but if you have a choice, who is willing to die? That's why there are gods, immortals, demons, ghosts, and monsters. Instead of passively adapting slowly, it is better to accept it actively." This is the answer given by Su Tong. I hope Gao Zhou won't get entangled in such trivial matters. Gao Zhou scratched his head and said, "If you want me to, I won't be a human being? It always feels weird." Su Tong curled his lips. If he hadn't promised Gao Tianfang not to tell Gao Zhou the secret of the Gao family's ancestral graves, he would have really wanted to complain at this moment, "There are so many uncivilized people in your Gao family." "As you wish, then what do you choose to do? Become a ghost? Inherit Mr. Shui's estate?" Gao Zhou asked Su Tong in return. Regarding this question, Su Tong just smiled mysteriously, exhaled a breath of hot breath in front of Gao Zhou's uncomprehending gaze, and watched the breath turn into cold frost in the air, and said with a smile, "If I could, I would jump sideways over and over again." Repeatedly jumping horizontally. Gao Zhou scratched his head, not knowing what he meant. In this moment of confusion, Su Tong-gren had already walked away. "Hey, wait for me. A layer of ice has already formed on the water in winter. In such spooky weather, even rabbits know that hiding in a hole and sleeping is the best option." But at this moment, a shirtless man was practicing boxing on the ice. The artillery hits Nanshan, its legs are like horses, its elbows are horizontal and vertical, and its arms are like bows. The man's fist was like a tiger, and every step fell as steady as a mountain. But if you look closely, you will find that the thickness of the ice surface is so thin that it makes people sweat, and a hole can be made by stepping on it with just a little force. If you don't practice Qigong to a certain level, let alone punching on it, even if you step on it and kick it, you will fall into a cold puddle. It turns out to be here. Two figures walked over with support in the wind and snow. Wu Qiudong raised his eyebrows coldly and said with an unhappy look, "Why is it you?" As he spoke, he slowly put down the crossbow in his hand. Peeping at others practicing boxing is a taboo in the industry, and killing them is not an exaggeration at all. But after seeing Su Tong, Wu Qiudong still put down the crossbow in his hand, knowing that this guy was not here to steal his master. "Hey, it's freezing cold. Let me bring you a pot of hot wine to warm you up." Su Tong casually took out a bottle of fire knife and handed it to Wu Qiudong. Wu Qiudong took the wine and his expression immediately improved a lot. But he still said rudely, "Don't do this, just tell me what you are doing here." Su Tong did not respond, but looked at Wang Zheng. "How is your boxing training going?" Reluctantly. Wu Qiudong nodded. Although it was a low evaluation, Wu Qiudong's eyes already showed his recognition of Wang Zheng. At least this is the most talented disciple he has ever taught. None of them. That's good. Here's the money you asked for and I'll send it to you. I'll take the person away today. Su Tong handed Wu Qiudong the money he had agreed upon. Wu Qiudong took a look, put away the money, and called Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng, who was concentrating on practicing boxing, just turned around and responded, but there was a slight change in the strength of his feet. Click. Wang Zheng's heart skipped a beat, but it was too late to dodge. He stepped on one foot and fell into the water with a plop. Ha 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 ha. If it were an ordinary person, they would suffer a serious illness even if they were not dead, but Su Tong and Gao Zhou laughed heartlessly. Wang Zheng climbed out of the water, steam rising from his body, and glared at the two of them angrily. However, seeing Gao Zhou coming, Wang Zheng frowned. "Is something wrong?" "Right." Su Tong nodded. Wang Zheng was also unambiguous. Although he was very happy practicing boxing here, knowing that Su Tong and Gao Zhou came together meant that there was going to be a big move next. He turned towards Wu Qiudong, clasping his fists with his hands, and bowed deeply. "Go, don't forget what you promised me." Wu Qiudong sighed, "Practice this set of boxing for a few more years. Once you've mastered it, stop practicing it. Find a monk, be it a monk or a Taoist priest. It's always better than being a martial artist." Others couldn't understand this, not even Wang Zheng. How could he still be a monk or a Taoist priest if he just practiced boxing? Su Tong heard clearly. This is Wu Qiudong's reminder to Wang Zheng that after a few more years of training to become a grandmaster, he can no longer practice martial arts blindly. Just as the eldest princess said when commenting on the fifth Sword King, first there is Tao, then there is Dharma. If you understand both, you can enter the mysteries. Obviously, after becoming a Grand Master, if you want to move up, you must study the Fa. Wang Zheng didn't understand, but it didn't stop him from writing it down. He bowed deeply to Wu Qiudong, then turned around and left with Su Tong and Gao Zhou. Watching the three people leaving, Wu Qiudong lowered his head, glanced at the bag of silver, then looked at the steel crossbow next to the silver, hesitated for a moment, and silently took his hand towards the silver. So, the Xiang family is going to ascend the throne and proclaim themselves emperor. The three of them walked along the muddy snowy road on Kinmen Street. Su Tong roughly explained to them the affairs in the palace, including the affairs of the eldest princess and Taoist Sun Long. Gao Zhou's eyes became hot when he heard that someone was even better than his master. The master didn't give him a chance to take away Li 11's body, otherwise he wouldn't have taken off early with the body of a great master. But having said that, I didn't have the ability to use corpses at the time, so I didn't expect this. Now that he heard that the next script would be so intense, the little Juju in Gaozhou couldn't help but become active. Then what you mean is that you want us to protect the Xiang family? Wang Zheng said in a deep voice. No. Su Tong shook his head. It's like this under normal circumstances, but I like to play abnormally. It's over. On the side, Gao Zhou covered his forehead. He knew that Su Tong was about to get sick again. He squinted and saw that there was a fanatical look in this guy's eyes, and even his breathing became rapid. Wang Zhen was obviously still too unfamiliar with this temporary captain and didn't understand what this person wanted to do. He asked curiously, "Then what do you mean?" Su Tong paused and slowly raised his head. Wang Zhen and Gao Zhou followed his gaze and saw a plaque hanging on the high threshold in front of Gao Gao, with 4 words written on it, Prince Gong's Mansion. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 398. Early the next morning, Su Tong arrived at the gate of the Forbidden Palace. After these days of chaos, the court finally resumed its administration. Today is the first day that the Empress Dowager Shenxi officially went to court. This time she did not sit behind the dragon chair, but sat on it openly. It seems that he wants to take this opportunity to declare his status. But the effect was not ideal. Although the ministers were very sure of the Empress Dowager Shenxi's move to depose the emperor, they were very dissatisfied with the Empress Dowager Shenxi's buttocks sitting on the dragon throne. Even though you have supported 3 emperors in your life, the real power of the court is always in your hands. But your ass really can't sit on this chair openly. Therefore, in the court, no matter how the Empress Dowager Shenxi led the topic, the courtiers who controlled the public opinion would not pick up the conversation. Instead, they kept recommending Prince Gong as the new emperor. This is probably something that the Empress Dowager Shenxi never expected. But can this happen? Of course not. If you, Prince Gong, come to power, I will be thrown into the cold palace to live in old age. This is something that the Empress Dowager Shenxi cannot tolerate. Therefore, the content of today's court meeting is naturally complicated and boring as you can imagine. Buzz. Su Tong pushed open the door of Kintian prison and bumped into Li 11, who was cleaning the room. The two looked at each other and stared at each other. Li 11's expression was dull for a few seconds, and the tears in his eyes could not help but roll down his cheeks. Brother Ma. The person he was calling was Brother Ma, but his enthusiasm was no less than when he saw his own father. Younger brother. Faced with Li 11's enthusiasm, Su Tong also cried with joy. Although there were no tears on his face, his hoarse and choked vibrato sounded as if there was already a scene like a surging river in his chest. For a moment, the two of them stood together, their faces filled with the joy of meeting again after a long separation. This is not just on the surface, but the voices in my heart are almost the same. How come this guy isn't dead yet? Not only was Su Tong depressed, but Li 11 was also unhappy. But the outstanding acting skills of the two made the guards patrolling around them deeply moved by their brotherly love. Ahem. At this moment, an untimely cough interrupted the two people's cries. Looking back, the two of them stared at each other. Su Tong was frightened, and Li 11 was so frightened that his face turned pale. Fu, Master Fu. The person walking in front of him was Fu Anning. How is it appropriate to cry and cry? All the work that needs to be done has been done. Fu Anning scolded him coldly. Neither of them dared to look up. Su Tong stared at Fu Anning's shadow with squinted eyelids. I couldn't help but wonder whether the person in front of me was the eldest princess or someone else. But one thing he can be sure of is that this person is definitely not Fu Anning. Master Yang was killed by a treacherous minister and traitor. Now the Kintian supervisor is busy with work. You two must work more carefully in the future and never be careless. Yes. Fu Anning nodded, glanced at Su Tonghao and said, "Come in with me." After saying that, he walked into Kintian Palace first. Su Tong walked in and carefully closed the door. I saw Fu Anning sitting on a chair, scanning Su Tong up and down. "Have you brought everything I asked you to bring?" I don't know why, but when he heard the sentence, Su Tong felt more at ease and nodded. "I brought it here, but..." "But what?" Fu Anning frowned. "But I didn't say anything. I was just a little unhappy when I heard you say that one person has one share of dragon energy." Su Tong lowered his voice and couldn't help swallowing after speaking. His eyes were silently observing the changes in the expression of the princess in front of him. This is a kind of temptation. These two people are already well-known figures. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are land gods. But Su Tong wanted to try to see if the two of them were really as omniscient as the rumors said. After reading through the Plum Blossom Yishu for so long, even the life icon has been upgraded to LV4, but even so, I still need to calculate the results by myself when divining the divination. Therefore, he concluded that even land gods like the princess and Taoist Sun Long could not be considered omniscient and omnipotent in everything. If that were the case, the two of them wouldn't need to use their little minions to convey news to each other. The eldest princess was silent for a moment, and finally said, "I understand." As the eldest princess walked up to Su Tong could feel a pair of eager eyes staring at his neck, and he could even hear the sound of swallowing. "Help us do things and we won't treat you badly." The eldest princess casually threw the two keys on the table. "The things on the second floor are all good things. Go and see for yourself." After saying this, Su Tong felt a heat on his neck. When he lowered his head, he discovered that there was a gash in his neck. Blood was flowing out from the wound. He didn't know when it had already soaked half of his collar. Looking back again, I found that the princess was gone. Buzz. Li 11 poked his head out of the door. "Brother Ma! Brother Ma!" Just after shouting twice, I suddenly saw Su Tong's face, and was instantly startled. "Brother Ma, are you still alive?" Su Tong stepped out from the shadows, but his face showed a sickly paleness. "Fine." As soon as the words fell, Su Tong's eyes darkened and he fell to the ground. In my sleep, the familiar wailing sound sounded in my ears again. A door full of rust opened. The guy with a face exactly like his own sat elegantly in front of the piano, tapping the keys lightly with his fingers. "You are in danger now." He raised his head and looked at Su Tong. With a complaining tone, he lifted up his cuffs, only to see a burnt scar on his gray arm. "This is the price for helping you last time. You shouldn't have summoned me during the day." Su Tong licked the corner of his mouth, feeling that his throat was so dry that he wanted to spit out fire. When he saw the glass of wine on the piano, he knew it was not real, but he still stepped forward and picked up the glass and drank it in one gulp. "If I didn't do that, I would be a rotting corpse now, and oh, by the way, even my soul might end up on someone else's dinner plate." After speaking, he raised his glass and said, "Have some more, it tastes really good. I don't care about what happened last time, but I don't hope that next time, your current body will not be able to fully inherit my power, so." The Demon King moved his face closer, and his expression gradually became ferocious. "So, I ask you, little guy, to find a secluded corner and live quietly. Can I understand that this is a kind reminder from you?" "No. You should understand that this is my last warning." When the Demon King finished these words, he snatched the wine glass from Su Tong's hand and pushed it hard towards his chest. The next moment, Su Tong's consciousness gradually began to recover. "Brother Ma, Brother Ma." The urgent shouting in his ears made him slowly open his heavy eyelids. As the blurred vision began to focus, Li 11's face appeared in front of Su Tong's eyes. "Huh, Brother Ma, you're finally awake. You didn't know that you almost scared me to death just now." Li 11 said and quickly picked up the soup bowl on the side. quick, drink some more. Someone from the Thai hospital came just now. They said you were anemic and prescribed a lot of medicinal soup for you. Lee 11 said, checking around, and then whispered, I also stole a century-old wild ginseng root from the Taiyuan hospital and added it to it. It is guaranteed to be a great supplement. Su Tong nodded, picked up the bowl and drank heavily. He was sure that this stuff was a great tonic. After all, Lee 11's nose was still bleeding. After a large bowl of medicinal soup entered his stomach, Su Tong felt much better. He reached out and touched his neck and found that the wound had healed. How long have I been asleep? 2 hours. Su Tong nodded, mentally cursing the eldest princess for being such a crazy bitch, and almost sucked himself dry. If he smoked it once a day, even if he had a dark constitution, he wouldn't be able to withstand her mistreatment. Lee 11 looked at Su Tong, who woke up, and opened his mouth to say something, but seeing that he didn't seem to wake up completely, he didn't open his mouth. He just told Su Tong to have a good rest and walked out with the bowl in hand. After Lee 11 went out, Su Tong held his chin in his hands and thought about his current situation. His current situation is already besieged on all sides. Not only is he caught between the cracks and may be easily crushed to death by the opponent at any time, but he also has to find a way to seek a comeback. Thinking about it, Su Tong sighed and turned his eyes to the 2 keys on the table. Kaka. The twisting sound of the iron door slowly sounded. When the door was pushed open, a musty smell of books poured into the nose. This was the 2nd floor of Kintian prison. It is also the Kintian supervisor who keeps the most confidential documents in the world. Normally, it would have been impossible for someone like Su Tong to come in, but now both keys fell into his hands. Xiangzi, Yin Yang Cave. Looking at the geographical tags posted on the file shelf, Su Tong began to search for them. Found it? Finally, Su Tong found the location of Xiangzi on the left side of the bookshelf. No matter what, it was still a worthwhile trip to find the information he was looking for. However, just when Su Tong was about to reach out to get the file on it, his expression suddenly froze because he saw a bloody hand pressing on the file first. If I were you, I wouldn't get this file, at least not directly like you are doing now. The familiar voice made Su Tong's scalp feel tense for a moment. He turned around slowly, and a bloody outline in the shadow gradually became clear. That person was none other than Fu Anning, Lord Fu, who had gone and returned. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 399. Looking at the outline that gradually became clearer in the shadows, Su Tong felt as if his throat was being strangled by a big hand. What? Are you surprised to see me? The shameless Fu Anning looked particularly frightened. Su Tong took a step back and said with a smile, how could it be? I was so happy to see you come back, sir. The days when I didn't see you, the students lived like years. Hee hee. Fu Anning smiled, the muscles on his face twisting and making a hoarse laugh. Soon the laughter subsided suddenly, and he raised his palm towards Su Tong. Seeing that the person had no time to dodge, Su Tong suddenly tapped his toes, and the person disappeared from Fu Anning's face in an instant. Huh. Fu Anning turned around in surprise and saw Su Tong-gren already appearing at the corner of the study. The only difference is that his eyes have turned into a pair of blue eyes, and 5 huge tails are faintly visible floating behind him. Oh! I didn't see it, but you also know how to get rid of the disciples. Fu Anning was really surprised. Since ancient times, immortals have never left seclusion and witches have never left the river. Ma Hongwen was just a playboy relying on his father to dominate, but there were too many surprises for Fu Anning. Who can't have some means to save their lives? Why are you so aggressive? Su Tong stood up straight and crossed his hands. Seeing Su Tong's hands, Fu Anning's eyes gradually narrowed, but he didn't even have eyelids, so he couldn't hide the murderous look in his eyes at all. After the two were in a stalemate for a moment, Fu Anning suddenly laughed. Ha 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 ha, okay, okay. He said 3 good words in a row, his eyes gradually softened, he walked to the spot where Su Tong was standing just now, stretched out his hand, and carefully took down the volume of books from the bookshelf. Only then did Su Tong notice that there was a silver thread as thin as hair hanging from the back of the book. If you take out any of the things here, they are treasures that can trigger a bloody battle in the world. As he spoke, Fu Anning gently unbuttoned a hidden button at the back. Lingling Yin Yang Feng Shui map, this place is a good place. There are 28 Feng Shui tombs in it. You can choose a place at random and bury your ancestors in it. It is enough for the whole family to continue to prosper for more than 100 years. Since its establishment, Qin Tianjian has rarely expanded its recruitment to outsiders. Even if you win the top prize, don't even think about entering Qin Tian prison. This position can only be passed down from father to son, and from son to grandson, from generation to generation. Even if you die, your body must be buried in the location planned by the court. Anyone who dares to bury the body 3 kilometers away from the capital will have his whole family implicated in the 9 clans without mercy. The reason why the rules are so strict is because there are so many secrets hidden in the world that ordinary people don't know. The landscapes and feng shui of past dynasties are all here. Fu Anning casually threw the file in his hand to Su Tong, but Su Tong did not dare to pick it up directly and let it fall at his feet. Facing a great master who was already determined to kill him, Su Tong couldn't help but be careless. Snored. Seeing him being so cautious, Fu Anning snorted displeasedly, "Put your hands down. This place is no less than the gunpowder magazine of Shenji camp. If the mechanism is triggered, both of us will die here." Fu Anning pointed to the dome. Su Tong looked carefully and saw a red fire dragon hovering on the dome, with a crystal lamp as big as a football in its mouth. It was filled with dark green liquid. Although I didn't know what it was, it definitely wasn't something good. In order to let Su Tong relax, Fu Anning walked to the table and chair aside and sat down slowly. And explained to him kindly. "The thing inside the dragon ball is divine fire oil. I don't know how it was prepared. Once the mechanism is triggered, the door behind you will close quickly, and the divine fire oil will sprinkle from above. As long as the thing encounters air, it will explode quickly. This floor is made of meteorite iron, and the dragon and tiger are together, and the 3 great mages are blessing it. Once the door is closed, even the gods cannot escape. So, sir, you are hiding here, is it because there is something special here?" Su Tong couldn't help but ask after hearing Fu Anning's mysterious words. "Yes, as soon as you left, I turned back. The most dangerous place is the safest place. I clearly remember that I didn't even have time to lock the door when the incident happened." After saying that, he pointed at himself. "Besides, do you think I can meet people like this?" Su Tong silently picked up the Lingling Yin and Yang Feng Shui map on the ground without even bothering to read it, and threw it directly into the prop book. Then he looked at Fu Anning. "What are your plans now, sir?" Fu Anning seemed to be waiting for the sentence, "Seize the dragon." When Su Tong walked downstairs, Dia dared to speak. "Headmaster, we are seeking skin from a tiger. This guy is unreliable." Hearing this, Su Tong smiled. It's as if any of the bosses around him can be trusted. The eldest princess, Taoist Sun Long, plus Fu Anning, good guy. I don't know how many masters will join in from now on. It's really getting more and more lively as it goes on. I don't have to worry about having too many debts now. As long as I give you benefits, everything is easy to discuss. In the next few days, the atmosphere in the court became more and more intense, and more ministers advocated choosing a new emperor immediately. Several veteran ministers from the Ministry of Revenue have publicly expressed their intention to support Prince Gong, while several other ministers support the still young Prince Chun. Before the Empress Dowager Shenxi decided to establish a new emperor, the following had already turned into a mess. Empress Dowager Shenxi also found that she could no longer suppress these courtiers. At present, neither the Xiang family nor the Ministry of War has expressed its stance. Everyone is still in a wait-and-see attitude. During this period, Xiang Gongbeo claimed that he was ill, and Ma Qi was suffering from a stab wound. The two seemed to have colluded, but they refused to express their opinions. Su Tong finally came to Xiang's house and took the opportunity to visit Xiang Keding and walked into the door of Xiang's house. "Brother Xiang, don't get up, you are injured, you must pay attention to your health." As soon as Su Tong entered the door, he saw Xiang Keding getting up from the bed, and hurriedly stepped forward and held Xiang Keding's arm to prevent him from getting up. "Nothing serious, just broke a leg." Xiang Keding spoke very easily, but Su Tong could feel that he was extremely restrained in his words. "After all, if you break a leg and become a cripple, it will disgrace your official appearance, so you can't be an official. And the Xiang family is not just Mr. Xiang." Su Tong could only say a few words of comfort to Xiang Keding. While the two were chatting, there was a knock on the door. A woman walked in the door carrying ointment. Su Tong raised his eyebrows. The woman who walked in made him a little surprised, but it was reasonable. It's none other than Zionjiao Tower's top brand, Xiao Xiaofeng. No, now, her identity is Xiang Gongbeo's ninth concubine. Su Tong glanced at Xiang Keding, who was lying on the bed. Seeing that his eyes were staring straight, he stood up and left. Xiang Keding still kept a few words of reservation, but in his heart he already wished that the light bulb would go away quickly. When Su Tong and Xiao Xiaofeng passed each other, they looked at each other, nodded politely and walked out. After Xiao Xiaofeng closed the door, she complained. "Those servants were so clumsy that they almost ruined the ointment while looking at the bird's nest porridge. They didn't care at all. Your father was afraid that they would be careless in applying the medicine, so he asked me to help the young master apply the medicine." Hearing this, Xiang Keding frowned. His eldest brother Xiang Kechen liked to drink bird's nest the most. Hearing this, he couldn't help but snorted, "Those idiots must have seen me become a cripple. I can't achieve anything. Now you know I went to curry favor with my elder brother." "Hey, don't say that. The young master is like a dragon or a phoenix among people." After the master came back, he stayed in the master's room and didn't sleep for 2 days. It shows that the master still likes the master the most in his heart. That is. Xiang Keding felt much relieved when he heard this. Seeing Xiao Xiaofeng slowly rolling up her bed quilt, her face turned red. She was not wearing pants under the quilt. Xiao Xiaofeng looked at her bare thighs and blushed for a moment. She looked even more charming now. "Wait for those cold little hands to touch the quilt." Xiang Keding felt like his soul was about to fly. Ah, Xiao Xiaofeng didn't know where she touched and was startled. "Why is there something moving inside?" As he was about to take his hand out, Xiang Keding saw this and ignored the injury on his leg. He grabbed Xiao Xiaofeng's little hand and pulled her into the bed tent with a strong pull. As the saying goes, love is endless in the spring night under the brocade tent, and the crazy soul is suspected to have entered the immortal boat. It does not hinder the muscles and bones of the two bodies, and the heaven-given match between the human and the human. Su Tong had just walked out of Xiang Keding's room and was walking out. Bang! There was a loud bang, and the lights in the yard went completely dark. During this period, the Xiang family's mansion had been using the steam generator, so no candles were lit. It suddenly darkened, and many guards were caught blind in an instant. Immediately afterwards, someone outside was heard shouting, "Catch the assassin!" When Su Tong heard the word assassin, he immediately became alert. He had promised Taoist Sun Long to protect Xiang Gongbeo within these 2 months. Relying on his dark vision and not being affected by the interference of his sight, he followed the sound. The Xiang family's mansion was in chaos, and some of the guards were in such a hurry that they had no time to find torches. Seeing a sneaky shadow walking quietly towards the backyard, Su Tong quickly followed him through the wooden hall. But the strange thing is that when people arrive at this place, there is no trace of them. "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Trembling sobs came from the corner. Su Tong looked around and saw a servant huddled in the corner, whispering in a choked voice. Su Tong had no interest in him, but just as he was about to leave, he suddenly realized something was wrong and looked over suspiciously. Such a familiar scene, Xiao Litzi seemed to have appeared in his sight like this not long ago. The two were surprisingly similar, but... Fake voice, 0 points. The body muscles are too relaxed, and there is no sense of fear or tension at all, 0 points. Hey, you actually peed your pants, is it such a big sacrifice? But that just makes me feel so sick, 0 points. Seeing that the other party was still whispering hard, Su Tong could only silently take out a piece of paper, put it in his hand, folded it a few times, and folded it into a faceless mask. Acting requires acting skills, not just how you act. Let me teach you the essence of the art of acting. The faceless mask gradually covered the smile at the corner of his mouth, leaving only a face with facial features, slowly, hidden in the darkness. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 400. Don't kill me, don't kill me, why the hell haven't you come yet? Huh, I've been getting a little angry lately. This smell is a bit choking. As a professional killer, Tang Feng has sufficient confidence in his methods. But the long wait made him a little impatient, but recently he read a book called A Killer's Self-Cultivation. It is said to be a book on the creed of a Western killer. Although it is in foreign language and I don't recognize it, I found someone who knew foreign language to read it to me every day. There is one sentence in it that he deeply agrees with: a qualified killer always makes your enemy unaware of your appearance. This sentence has become Tang Feng's killer creed, and he specially invited a foreigner to help tattoo the sentence on his back. While waiting for a long time, footsteps finally came from behind. Tang Feng's ears twitched slightly and his voice became even hoarse. "Hey, are you okay?" Hearing the concerned voice behind him, Tang Feng secretly let out a long breath. It's finally my turn to appear. Following the scene that he had rehearsed countless times, he turned around and said, don't kill me, I have nothing." Tang Feng was halfway through his words when he suddenly seemed to realize something. His scalp suddenly felt numb. After a brief pause, his lips began to tremble and his breathing began to become rapid. In the dim light, the face slowly lifted up, and what was reflected in front of Tang Feng was a face without facial features. He lowered his head instinctively. He saw his wet trouser legs. I also saw a hand that didn't look like a human at all. No, it should be called a claw more appropriately. It had golden skin and slender nails stained with bright red blood. For a time, tears began to brew in Tang Feng's eyes, his nose began to feel sore, as if mucus was about to fall, and his facial muscles also spasmed slightly. The voice was filled with a panicky emotion. Fear. Don't kill me, I didn't see anything, don't kill me, ah. If my mind was still spinning, I might have yelled two other words: there's a ghost. Finally, when he saw the claw slowly reaching towards his chest, Tang Feng's brain buzzed, and he finally collapsed and passed out. Looking at Tang Feng, who had passed out, Fa Cai twisted a few times and patted Tang Feng's face in front of him. After confirming that he was really unconscious, he stuck out his white tongue and licked the ketchup smeared on his body clean. Turned around and crawled back to Su Tongtang's mouth. Su Tong took off his mask, took a disgusted look at the new urine stains on the ground and backed away half a step. Look, this is a serious performance. People outside were still shouting to kill the assassin, but the shouts were getting further and further away from me. Just when he was wondering why the Xiang family guard suddenly became such a noob, a black light flew in the darkness, reaching the center of Su Tong's eyebrows. Master! Su Tong realized later, but did not panic. He raised his hands, and magic flames poured out from his palms. The dark blue firelight instantly illuminated the darkness, and a terrifying high-temperature fireball burst out to attack the black shadow in front. Huh! Accompanied by the sound of surprise, the masked man under the firelight whirled in the air, narrowly avoiding the attacks of the demonic flames. His body suddenly lowered, and the blade that had just been unsheathed was quickly put into the scabbard. This weird shape made Su Tong aware of the danger, so he rushed forward before the opponent could draw his sword. Faced with such a master who was extremely good at killing, Su Tong was not stupid enough to use the 5-animal grappling hand and close combat to fight against the opponent. It is foolish to use one's own shortcomings to attack the enemy's strong points. Not only will it not bring you any benefits, but it will also make you extremely passive. He tiptoed, and the big girl on the entrance of the hall was like a white rainbow falling on him. His speed increased instantly, and he rushed in front of the opponent almost instantly. Court death. Seeing Ma Hongwen, whose speed suddenly increased several times, the masked man let out a low roar and raised his palm to the blade. Buzz. There was a sharp buzzing sound from the blade. The sound of the breaking blade was like someone wooing the erhu, and time slowed down. Flying sword. The blade was unsheathed, and Su Tong saw clearly that it was a black matte sword. The air around the blade suddenly froze when the blade was unsheathed, as if time was disconnected at this moment. Boom. However, the texture of the blade was as hard as metal. Su Tong, who originally swooped towards him, was now replaced by a huge paper man. Not good. Sajiro noticed that the sword had missed, so he swung the sword and instinctively stood behind him. But it's too slow. Su Tong watched the sword slash down head-on without dodging until it made a sharp collision sound on the ground. He raised his hand and a golden spear went straight through Taro Sai's throat from a distance of 2 meters. Puff. Blood dripped down the gun barrel like a curtain of red beads. Taro Sai's eyes widened and he stared blankly at Su Tong, who was 2 meters away from him. His chest was heaving violently, as if he was still wondering where this guy took out such a long spear. I'm sorry, but every inch I grow I'm stronger. Obviously I'm stronger than you. The corner of Taro Sai's mouth twitched a few times, as if he wanted to curse, but in the end he collapsed to the ground helplessly. This way. The hurried footsteps of guards outside came. When the torch was raised high to light up the room, Su Tong Gren was sitting on a chair with one hand holding the snacks on the table. A masked corpse lay on the ground. Hongwen. Hongwen. At this time, Xiang Gongbeo hurriedly walked in wearing pajamas. After seeing Ma Hongwen sitting there eating snacks, he glanced at the masked corpse on the ground, and his expression suddenly became strange. Hongwen, are you okay? Xiang Gongbeo ignored the corpse on the ground and walked to Su Tong and asked. It's okay. The lights went out just now. I heard someone outside shouting for the assassin, so I just sat here and didn't dare to move. After a while, I heard the sound of fighting in front of me, and then you guys came. Su Tong stuffed the piece of snack into his mouth with an innocent face. Needless to say, the dim sum tastes really good. The bean paste filling does not have the taste of saccharin in reality, but the bean paste is ground very finely, and the outside is a layer of pastry coated with ghee. When you bite into it, the salty aroma relieves the greasiness. After eating there is an aftertaste that lingers on the lips and teeth. Call. Although Xiang Gongbeo didn't believe what he said, he still breathed a sigh of relief. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You are the last member of the Ma family. If you have 3 shortcomings, I can't be with your father. Explain. After speaking, he looked sharply at the corpse on the ground and the guy pretending to be a servant in the corner. These two people must be killers sent by the new school students. These new school students are truly a disgrace to the country. I will go to court early tomorrow morning and will definitely make all regions step up their efforts to uproot them. Su Tong had an expression on his face that said, "You will do whatever you say." After all, although Xiang Gongbeo has a high position, he is really not a person who is good at acting. At least in front of Su Tong, his acting skills were only slightly better than the one lying in the corner. When something like this happened to the Xiang family, Xiang Gongbeo didn't keep Su Tong any longer and sent some soldiers and a carriage to personally escort Su Tong home. The carriage was uncomfortable, but fortunately the distance between the two families was not far. Su Tong got off the carriage and asked the soldiers to take the carriage back. He stood alone at the door of his house, took out the hookah pipe, and squatted at the door to smoke. Are those killers really here to kill Xiang Gongbeo? If so, why not go straight to the backyard instead of ambushing in the front hall? If not, then who are they trying to kill? Thinking of this, Su Tong suddenly remembered what Xiang Gongbeo said just now, that he was the only son of the Ma family. Ha! So you came for me? Su Tong curled his lips and stood up slowly, saying that no matter how big the deal is, no one should stick to the trivial matters. To achieve this level of the Xiang family is really extraordinary. In Ma Hongwen's memory, ever since he could speak, he would call him Uncle Xiang and sacrifice himself to the flag. Is this what humans do? Thinking of this, Su Tong's heart moved and he called out, "Jixiang, go tell Gao Zhou and ask them to do it tonight, cleanly." Jixiang nodded, turned into a ray of white light and disappeared into the mouse hole on the side. Looking at Ji Xiang's disappearing figure, Su Tong snorted coldly, "You are in the first year of junior high school, and I will be in the 15th year, all to make you wear the yellow robe. Whoever's son dies will not die." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 402. Master, Tang Feng has already asked. He said. Say what? Say hell. The voice of Xiang Gongbeo's personal attendant became softer and softer as he spoke, as if he noticed that his master's face was getting uglier, and he hurriedly said, "Master, this matter is too strange. Tang Feng is also a killer we have trained for many years, and there has been no such incident in so many years. Chizi, you have seen Taro Sa's strength before, but his death is unknown, and the boy named Ma is probably not a fuel-efficient lamp." Snapped. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiang Gongbeo slapped him in the face with a big slap. "It's up to you to say this." Xiang Gongbeo sat on the chair angrily, with 2 walnuts in his hand. The thing he was most worried about now was not Ma Hongwen, but Ma Qi. Who is Ma Hongwen? How could Xiang Gongbeo watch him grow up and not know that compared with his own sons, whether it was Xiang Kechen or Xiang Keting, they were 8 miles ahead of him? But he sent 2 capable killers, and one of them died and the other went crazy. Xiang Gongbeo was worried that Ma Qi had secretly sent a master to protect his son. This explanation is the most reasonable. After all, Ma Qi is such a precious son, so he sent a master to protect him secretly to prevent this kid from being assassinated while walking on the street. If this is really the case, will his actions today be obvious to others? If Ma Qi guesses that he wants to use his son as an excuse to stir up trouble. Thinking that Ma Qi now had 80,000 forbidden troops in his hands, Xiang Gongbeo instantly became extremely irritable. "Go prepare some gifts and go to Ma's house tomorrow." Xiang Gongbeo made up his mind and waved to follow him. "Sir, Tang Feng." The follower cautiously tried. "If you fail to succeed, you will fail. Drag him out and behead him. Tomorrow he will be sent to Ma's house together with his head." The follower lowered his head, silently regretting that the killer he had trained for so many years was wasted like this. Just as the entourage was about to leave, there was a sudden commotion outside. Bang 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 bang. A bullet penetrated the door panel and directly broke the teacup in Xiang Gongbao's hand into pieces. The old dog of the Xiang family came out to die. Early the next morning, a large number of officers and soldiers were searching the streets again. Ma Qi also dragged Su Tong to Xiang's house with his injuries that had not yet healed. In front of the main door of the Xiang family, all the festive red lanterns were replaced with white ones. Last night, the Xiang family suffered revenge from the new school. Xiang Gongbao was fine, only injured one hand, but his son was brutally murdered by the thieves. Xiang Keting was wearing a white robe, holding the coffin of his eldest brother Xiang Kechen in the morning hall, crying so sadly. Seeing Su Tong, Xiang Keting limped over and cried heartbrokenly. Su Tong could smell the strong smell of garlic on this guy's hands from a distance. Ma Qi repeatedly confessed to Xiang Gongbao. After all, Admiral Jimin was responsible for the safety of the capital. If such a big thing happened, the blame would definitely fall on him. Ma Qi was already prepared to be reprimanded by Xiang Gongbao on the way here. However, surprisingly, Xiang Gongbao did not blame him for this incident, but only demanded that those disciples of the new school must be eradicated. My condolences to Uncle Xiang. Su Tong brought the tea to him. Xiang Gongbao took the tea and looked at Su Tong deeply, but finally said nothing. Soon someone came to the palace, and they simply gave Xiang Kechen a title of nobility and allowed him to be buried as a first-class public servant. To others, these are rare honors, but to Xiang Gongbao, everyone is dead, so what is the use of leaving these false names? Not long after, Prince Gong also came, personally offering incense to Xiang Kechen, holding Xiang Gongbao's hand and softly comforting him, speaking with deep affection. Ma Qi also comforted him. Xiang Gongbao felt extremely uncomfortable. According to his original plan, this scene should have happened at the Ma family, and the person lying in the coffin should be Ma Hongguan. But at this time, he didn't care so much anymore. People can't be resurrected after death. Although there are some discrepancies in the plan, the general direction has not changed. Then a farce that had been prepared for a long time began to unfold. Just when the Xiang family's mansion was filled with mourning, a servant hurried in and whispered a few words into Xiang Gongbao's ear. Xiang Gongbao's face instantly darkened. The others still didn't know what was going on, but Xiang Gongbao picked up the teacup in his hand with a cold face and said to Prince Gong, "Prince Gong, the humble minister is in charge of the army and horses of the court, and he only wants to protect his family and country. Who the new emperor is, I don't care about." These sudden words made Prince Gong stunned for a moment, and others present were also stunned. The people who come here to pay their respects are all ministers of the DPRK, and all of them are fine people. Who would say what they say openly? Just like not long ago, the Minister of Household Affairs brought a group of veterans to see Prince Gong. On the surface, he was complaining that the new school of thought was causing harm to the country and the people, and wanted Prince Gong to administer justice. What kind of justice can be done, and in what capacity can one do justice? Don't forget that the man behind the new school of thought is the emperor. Prince Gong needs to understand these words himself and must not say them out loud. We support you as emperor, as long as you kill the new school of thought. When these words come out, Prince Gong will be the first to kill the Minister of Household Affairs, otherwise he will be in big trouble if word spreads. But now Xiang Gongbao suddenly said this, and Prince Gong's face was full of embarrassment. He didn't accept the words, and it didn't matter if he didn't. At this time, Prince Gong's butler also ran in a hurry. As soon as the butler entered the door, he noticed that the atmosphere was not right, and hurriedly walked to Prince Gong and whispered a few words in his ear. Prince Gong wanted to get angry when he saw that the housekeeper was so ignorant. "I didn't see so many people staring at me. Why are you chewing on my ears?" But after listening to the butler's words, Prince Gong's expression suddenly changed. "Brother Xiang, this matter definitely has nothing to do with me. Someone must have framed it." Brother Xiang must be aware of it. Others began to get the news one after another. Just an hour ago, the government really caught an assassin. The assassin was injured and went to the drugstore to see a doctor. After the doctor discovered that it was a stab wound, he thought of the search by the officials outside today. So he used anesthetic to stun the other party, and then reported it to the official for his backhand. After the assassin was caught, he was naturally tortured to extract a confession. As a result, everyone was devastated. This guy actually bit out Prince Gong. Now the government officials are also numb. No matter how hard they beat the other party, they refuse to change their tune. Even after they were bitten to death, it was Prince Gong who sent them to assassinate Xiang Gongbeo. It is said that Prince Gong has made the final plan to seize power by force if Empress Dowager Shenxi does not give up the throne. Now that the news has come, Prince Gong is also dumbfounded, although this is what he had planned in his heart. At this moment, Prince Gong felt more uncomfortable than eating a fly. He couldn't explain why the yellow mud fell off his crotch, so he could only try his best to distance himself from the relationship. But Xiang Gongbeo just replied coldly that he was feeling ill and had gone back to his room to rest. Now Prince Gong could only leave the Xiang family with a dark face and dejection. Although everyone said that the assassin must have been framed by someone with intentions, everyone knew that this matter could not just go away. The Empress Dowager Shenxi would not miss this opportunity. After Su Tong followed Ma Qi home in a hurry, Ma Qi asked people to start packing their things and asked everyone in the family to go out and hide in Wangchuang. Ma Qi, who has always been very insensitive to politics, has already smelled the smell of danger at this time, which means that the capital city is about to change. Dad, I can't leave. I have to go back to the palace as an errand. Su Tong stepped forward and said to Ma Qi. Go away, why are you causing trouble now? Ma Qi scolded with a dark face. The person he was most worried about was his useless son. Surprisingly, Su Tong did not show fear towards Ma Qi as usual today. Instead, he brought Ma Qi a cup of tea with a smile. Dad, everyone else can leave, but I can't leave. If I leave, everyone will see that something is wrong. Besides, at this time, do you think I can leave? You are the only son. As soon as he said this, Madge was stunned. Yes, everyone can leave, but this little bastard can't leave. If he dared to leave the city, he might be captured and taken hostage the next day. Dad, if I leave, no one in the family will have a good time. There is no one to protect me outside. It's better to be comfortable at home. Can't you just send more people to protect me? Ma Qi frowned. Although as a father, he wanted to reject his son's proposal, but he had to say that this brat who was usually unconventional, what he said today made it impossible for him to refute. This, master, let Hongwen stay alone? Then I won't leave either. When the eldest grandma saw that Hongwen refused to leave, how could she, a mother, be willing to leave? Mom, you guys still have to leave. It's fine for me to be alone. If there is really any trouble, I can hide myself. The capital is so big, I can hide anywhere. If you guys stay here, I can't even run away. My son is right, why are you, a woman, causing trouble here? Hurry up and pack your bags and get ready to leave. Ma Qi waved his hand impatiently, determined to send his family out of the capital today, even if the grandma cried, made a fuss, and hung herself, it wouldn't work. Fortunately, the eldest grandma thought about Su Tong's words and felt that it made sense. Coupled with Ma Qi's attitude, she half pushed her and got on the carriage. Before leaving, he did not forget to tell Su Tong to take good care of his health. Seeing the grandma wiping her tears, Su Tong's envy for Ma Hongwen increased. I don't know why, but he couldn't help thinking, what does my mother look like? Of course, this idea was quickly abandoned by him. He had never seen his parents, and he didn't want to see them. On this day, Many people left the capital, and even those who were insensitive to politics could feel that something was wrong. Because this has nothing to do with politics. After Prince Gong returned to the palace, he took a break and asked the Empress Dowager Shenxi to investigate and prove his innocence. He also took sick leave and refused to go out. The response of the Empress Dowager Shenxi was simple. She asked Yingtian Mansion to handle it strictly, and at the same time, she asked the Zongren Mansion to investigate together. However, the strange thing is that the assassin died that night. The death was inexplicable. According to the prison boss, they watched as the assassin's head slowly twisted around and finally turned into a twist. Now that there is no evidence, everyone should be relieved, at least on the surface, everyone is relieved. But no. The atmosphere became even more tense. This tension is not only reflected in the court, but even ordinary people can detect it. The most intuitive thing to say is that the soldiers on the streets have been replaced recently. The 8 banners soldiers who were originally living a sparse life have been replaced by soldiers trained by Ma Kixin, who strictly interrogate people entering and leaving the capital. Even the foreigner area has begun to implement a strict curfew system. As for the choice of the new emperor, the court was still debating, but the shouts from Prince Gong's side were getting smaller and smaller. Sir, do you think Prince Gong will really rebel? In Kintian prison, Su Tong carefully served tea to the eldest princess. The eldest princess took a sip and frowned. It doesn't taste good. When I was alive, I liked to drink Da Hongbao from Wuyi Mountain. There is an old tree there with the purest taste. Su Tong curled his lips and thought to himself, good guy, one tael of tea costs millions, you think this is still your Ming dynasty. However, the eldest princess's words reminded him that there are still many good things like this in this era. For example, the flying dragons in the northeast are not protected animals and can be eaten. There is no chance that he will be able to taste them in the future. Prince Gong doesn't have that fate. If he is sensible, he should behave obediently. Su Tong narrowed his eyes when he heard this, but he didn't, so whether the new emperor ascends the throne or the Queen Mother Shenxi continues to be in power, he will not be able to escape the result of being liquidated in the end. No one in power would be able to tolerate his former rivals living comfortably. If they didn't kill them, they would simply have trouble sleeping and eating. What's more, Prince Gong is not a fuel-efficient lamp. He will not sit still and wait for death. On the contrary, it is an inevitable result. But when he will rebel is the most intriguing part. Su Tong was lost in thought when he suddenly noticed something. He glanced sideways and saw the eldest princess inadvertently licking the corners of her mouth, and her heart skipped a beat. I remembered, Li 11, how did you do what I asked you to do, that's it? After saying that, Su Tong stood up and walked out. No. I should say running. But as soon as he ran to the door, before he could even open the door, a hand grabbed his collar and pulled him back hard. As soon as his body sank, he felt that he had hit something soft and cool. When he turned around, he saw that the eldest princess had revealed her pair of sharp fangs. Oh, bite me gently for fear of pain. Tons, tons, tons. Bang. Su Tong was thrown to the ground, as weak as a 40-year-old man who had been forced to do so 10 times a night, while the eldest princess wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth with a satisfied look on her face. Your blood still tastes good, pure, and free of impurities. It really makes me want to drain you dry all at once. The eldest princess stared at Su Tong's body. With his special physique, for her, not only did the blood taste great, but it also contained extremely pure dark power. This was simply the best tonic for her. But although such a delicious product is delicious, you should not be greedy for too much. Last time, Su Tong accidentally inhaled a little too much, which almost killed Su Tong. Fortunately, the ginseng that Li 11 stole was boiled into soup, which allowed him to recover. Angry. So this time, she tried her best to control her desires, fearing that if she couldn't hold back, she would drain him dry. After all, the eldest princess is well aware of this superficial principle of having a good meal every time. What else could Su Tong say? He didn't want to say anything. The eldest princess is obviously the kind of scumbag who just pulls up her pants and leaves. After patting his belly, he swaggered home and lay down in the coffin to sleep. Su Tong was left lying on the ground for several hours before he could barely catch his breath thanks to the recovery power of his dark constitution. By the time he climbed out, it was almost dark outside. After calling out to Li 11, I remembered that Li 11 had taken leave today. Looking at the time, it was still early. Su Tong walked towards the palace gate in the other direction. Most of the imperial guards have no way to get to the harem, not to mention that they are not yet imperial guards. However, there is a small tea room at the Huang Gate where ordinary people visiting relatives can wait. Su Tong walked into the tea room, gave the guard a silver melon seed, and asked him to go in and pass the news. After waiting for more than half an hour, he saw a palace maid sticking her head out of the door in a cunning manner. "How about it, are you used to it here?" "It's not bad. The food is better than outside. Eunuch, he takes care of me. No one bullies me." The little palace maid whispered, her eyes rolling around Su Tong, and she stood in the farthest corner as soon as she entered the door, as if the man in front of her was a tiger that eats people without spitting out bones. This little palace maid is none other than the thief Yang Qi, who was sent to the palace by Su Tong. The Mr. He in her mouth was the old eunuch who took her into the palace. At that time, Su Tong gave the old eunuch a full 2,000 taels of silver in order to send her into the palace. How could he not take care of her? After listening to her words, Su Tong nodded. "It's good if you can survive, but I didn't send you here to live, so do me a favor." "What?" Yang Qi looked at Su Tong alertly. Su Tong took out a piece of paper from his sleeve, with a square metal box drawn on it. There is also a map at the back, which describes the situation of the treasure building of the Ministry of Internal Affairs in detail. There must be mechanisms and guards inside, but Su Tong believed that these things would not be difficult for the self-proclaimed thief Yang Qi. "Bring me this box and its contents, and better hurry, time is running out." "You asked me to steal something." Yang Qi's head was like a rattle. "This is the palace. If I go to steal something, I will die if I am caught." Su Tong cracked the melon seeds and smiled. "You don't have to steal it, but you must give this thing to me, otherwise." Having said this, the smile on Su Tong's face gradually grew. "I will report you now and ask the guards to search your room. I think there will be unexpected gains." "You." When Yang Qi heard this, she felt angry and anxious. As an excellent thief, such a good place in the palace was filled with treasures. It was not too much to pick up some unwanted things by others. "That's it? You help me get the things, and I'll give you a large sum of money and take you out of the capital. Remember, it's best within this week." After saying that, he ignored Yang Qi's angry eyes, patted his butt and left. However, compared to the scumbag who likes prostitution for free like the eldest princess, I was kind enough to leave Yang Qi 200 taels of silver notes as a reward. "Sorry, I will update it first today, but it is just a big chapter. I will add more chapters when I recover a little bit." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 403. Come, drink, drink. At the wine table, the four people were changing glasses. Li 11 saw that Huo Wuji and the others seemed to have gained a lot of weight in the recent period, and couldn't help but sigh. Brothers have been living a good life recently, and they are all rich. Hey, it's better to be safe than to hang around on the road. Qinjue held a chicken leg in his hand and said vaguely. Huo Wuji and Bai Shitong also nodded. In this world, there are floods in Henan, drought in Shandong, and foreign devils entering the city. What kind of new deal is it, and it turns into rebels in a while? It is always just one word, chaos. The world is in chaos, and it's not just the common people who are suffering, but heroes like them are also suffering along with them. Even if you are a robber, you still need someone to rob. Therefore, it is an excellent choice to be able to stay safe and do not have to worry about food and drink at this time. Besides, Mr. Ma treats them well, and the money he gives every month is enough for them to be happy. Lee 11 took a sip from the wine glass, looked at the satisfied expressions of the three of them, his eyes rolled around, and put the glass down after a moment. Yes, our life is really comfortable, but... Having said this, Lee 11 let out a long sigh. After all, we are also cultivators. This. Huo Wuji and the other three looked at each other. Yes, all four of them had different backgrounds. Take Qian Shu, for example. He was born in the Tang sect and was good at concealed weapons, but he also worshipped in a Taoist temple and learned a lot of internal skills and mental techniques. Huo Wuji himself also practiced Hunyuan fire hard, and he had cultivated it to a very high level. There was only a thin line between him and the Grand Master, but it was such a thin line that he couldn't even find the door for so many years. Seeing the expressions of several people, Lee 11 continued, I know that everyone wants to live a peaceful life, but do you know that I learned something in Kintian prison? Lee 11 told Fu Anning and what happened in Kintian prison during this period one by one. Huo Wuji and the others' eyes widened when they learned that the Datong dynasty was about to perish, or even that the dragon veins would be cut off from now on, or even about to enter the age of end of Dharma. If it weren't for the fact that many of what Lee 11 said could be corroborated, plus their understanding and familiarity with Lee 11, they would probably be treated as a lunatic and talking nonsense. So, the world is going to end. Bai Shitong patted his heart, feeling that his heart was getting more and more painful recently. Yes. But to be precise, the world is about to be in chaos, and it will be a great chaos that cannot be destroyed or established. It has been more than 200 years since the Great Unification Dynasty, and its momentum is about to come to an end. If the world is united for a long time, it will divide, and if it is divided for a long time, it will unite. In the future it must be an earth-shattering chaos. Lee 11 expressed his guess. Looking at the confused expressions of Huo Wuji and the other three, he slapped the table, bang. The three of them were startled by the loud noise, and Lee 11 looked sad and angry and said, the world is in chaos, we are prosperous, and times make heroes. Everyone, if you don't have real skills, will you be manipulated in the future? This. The three of them didn't know what to do. They knew that Lee 11's statement was correct, but for a while they didn't know what to say. Only Qian Shu remained rational. He signaled Lee 11 to sit down and said, Brother Lee, you are right, but what can we do? Those big shots you mentioned are not in a hurry to leak feng shui now. We hear it's okay for a little grasshopper to be hopping around blindly. No, we need to prepare for a rainy day. Don't forget, if you want to practice cultivation, you must first have a life, and secondly, you must have treasures. And the place with the most treasures in the world is the Aoki Palace. If the world is going to perish, Aoki will definitely dramatic changes. Let's. Lee 11 gave a rough outline of his plan. After hearing this, the three of them looked at each other, and their eyes became hot. But Kinja still felt a little worried. But, just the three of us, isn't it too risky? Even if there were further chaos in the country, it would be unrealistic for the three of them to go inside and seize the treasure. There is absolutely no way that there is not even a Grand Master in the Great Inner Forbidden Palace. That Wang Wu last time was just a fluke. Those Grand Masters are probably too lazy to do anything or don't want to be exposed. But if the Great Inner Forbidden Palace really turns into a mess as Lee 11 said, then it may not be that easy for them to fish in troubled waters. This. After Lee 11 thought about it for a moment, he raised his eyebrows slightly. This is easy. Since there are too few of us, let's spread the news and leave this matter to you. It shouldn't be difficult. Li 11 looked at Bai Shitang and said. Small problem, 5 days, no, 3 days, I guarantee the news will spread throughout the world. Bai Shitang patted his chest and assured that it was not easy for others to spread the news in such a short period of time. In some places, it would even take 10.5 months at least to receive the news. By then the daylily will be cold, but there is a reason why Bai Shitang is called Bai Shitang. Then it's settled. Li 11 picked up the wine glass. Brothers, you can become a king or lose a bandit in just one thought. Dry. The three of them drank heavily, and it was not until late at night that Li 11 remembered to return to the palace quickly. So after bidding farewell to the three of them in a hurry, he walked toward the palace with tipsy steps. As he walked, he thought to himself that when he gets the treasure, he will be able to dominate the world and completely reverse his destiny. Of course, if that treasure can make you a perfect person, that would be the best. The more Li 11 thought about it, the more he felt that the future was promising. Suddenly, the smile on his face faded, and he looked back squinting. Who is it? Come out of our house. Huh. There was a sound of surprise in the darkness, and a thin guy emerged from the shadows. Looking at Li 11 in front of him with wide eyes, he said in surprise, they are exactly the same. What exactly? Who are you? Li 11 squinted his eyes and saw that the other party was thin and looked weak. However, when the other party came towards him, Li 11 smelled a familiar smell. Corpse. It's not the ordinary rotting smell of corpses, but the unique smell of corpses after they have been refined. He was born in the mission sect, and even though he was not proficient in the art of corpse refining, he was still the master of the family. Therefore, it was obvious at a glance that the little man in front of him must be a master of corpse refining due to the strong corpse smell on his body. Hey. Gao Zhou was not going to talk nonsense with this guy. He wanted to avenge Mr. When Li 11 saw that the visitor was unkind, he almost woke up from his drunkenness. He raised his robe sleeves, and a black wind came out of it. In the black wind, a red poisonous snake opened its mouth and bit him. However, Gao Zhou didn't take it seriously at all. His arm quickly transformed into a corpse, and Buddha's light came out of his palm. He beat the red snake into pieces and chopped it down hard without losing its power. What is this? Li 11 screamed in his heart. As an expert in corpse refining, he had never seen such a strange ability. In shock, he activated his soul-capturing hand and slapped it towards the Buddha's light. Result. Li 11's face turned pale and he suddenly raised his head. Half-step master. In shock, the person flew out like a kite with broken strings, fell to the ground, rolled on the ground, ignored his injuries, got up and ran away. While running, he shouted, "Help, kill." It was the curfew time recently, and defenders would occasionally pass by on the street. Li 11 was lucky enough to run a few steps and saw the defenders. His face suddenly showed a look of joy, and he quickly shouted for help. Who? The defenders seemed to have noticed something, but the direction they noticed was not Li 11, but a black outline gradually became clear on the street. The huge and muscular figure rushed towards them like a mad bull. It's a rebel. As soon as one of the defenders uttered his words, the opponent's figure had already pounced on him, killing them like a tiger rushing into a herd of sheep. These elites who had been trained by Ma Chi could not even see clearly how the opponent punched. They could only hear the roars of tigers, and they fell into a coma, completely losing consciousness. Li 11 was dumbfounded. He saw clearly that the opponent was just a pair of fists. There were no exquisite moves. They were simple and ordinary moves, but they were deadly and fast. I am afraid that even Huowaji may not be so fast. Strength. Just as he was stunned, a cold air came from behind Li 11. Looking back, I saw an unforgettable scene. A pair of bone wings sprouted from behind that terrifying figure, suspended in mid-air. What kind of monster is this? Li 11 screamed and tried to escape, but the increasingly strong wind pressure behind him made him feel that death was approaching. Suddenly, his body felt light, and a heart-wrenching tingling sensation hit his back. Am I going to die? Lee-11's vision began to blur, and his heart was full of unwillingness. He didn't want to die, and he still had too many regrets. He also wanted to live like a human being. I want to live. In his vague consciousness, he was shouting desperately, and suddenly a basin of cold water was poured on his head. The biting coldness caused Lee-11 to open his eyelids suddenly, but his vision was blurry. Lee-11's eyes widened for a while before his blurry vision began to focus. But when he saw the figure in front of him clearly, he doubted whether he had seen it wrong. Under the candlelight, he saw a figure wearing purple clothes and brocade robes embroidered with dragons, holding tea and waiting for him. He couldn't help but be surprised. Prince Gong. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 404. God created the world and created mankind. He warned that humans must have the following excellent qualities in order to be recognized by God: love, humility, kindness, courage, justice, sacrifice. Only those with such noble character can feel God's call, ascend to heaven, and become God's servants there. On the contrary, a series of depraved behaviors such as depravity, suicide, crime, alcoholism, abortion, etc., will inevitably send the soul to hell. Although there is no solemn and sacred atmosphere of the church, when Amritat stands on the street and speaks, the people around him will involuntarily stop and listen to Amritat's voice. Even though his Chinese can be called a loose version of Pinxixi, it does not affect the fascinating sunshine in his voice. It is obviously winter, but in this part of the capital, a cold wind blows over, making even the person wearing a thick coat still shiver. But when Unlimitedflow was speaking, people listened to his voice, and it seemed as if most of the thick haze in the sky had dissipated, and the sun was shining on them, and they felt warm all over. Even a beggar on the roadside became more and more intoxicated by listening to it. Perhaps the set of missionary rhetoric itself has been endowed with a kind of magical power that makes people obsessed. After being polished and streamlined in the process of missionary work for thousands of years, it has been sublimated into an art. The art of language. Of course, not everyone will like this kind of art. He may even do some small damage. Bang! A dull cracking sound caused the beggar's attention to shift slightly. He frowned immediately because such a familiar sound made him realize that his job might have been smashed. But the kind voice of the priest in front of him made him still wondering whether to turn his eyes away and look at his job in reality, or continue to be immersed in the dream of heaven. Boom! A second sound rang out from the bowl, this time more muffled. The beggar finally lowered his head and took a look. After all, sweet dreams will eventually wake up, and his job is his last fortune. Ah! When the beggar lowered his head and saw the huge silver lump in the bowl, he was stunned. What gospel, what God, go to hell with that paradise in your mind that makes people yearn for it. These 2 pieces of white money were enough for him to go to the J-yard on the street and enjoy the caress of a woman while smoking fuchsia ointment. That was a paradise that he could see and touch. Thank you, uncle. I wish you great blessings, peace and prosperity, many children and grandchildren, prosperous animals at home, Mount Titian evergreen in front of the door, and the God of peace behind the door. May you be blessed with happiness, prosperity, longevity, and success in chess in the Immortal Academy. The Queen Mother Fairy Peach Tree Bears. In other words, beggars also need professional counterparts. Even though this beggar doesn't know a word of Chinese characters, he can speak so smoothly after seeing the money. Even if you are asked to say a blessing to your elders during the Chinese New Year in an ordinary family, you may not be able to say it so smoothly. Regardless of whether the words are disgusting or not, whoever hears this will feel uncomfortable. At least Su Tong was very comfortable. Su Tong felt comfortable, and the price of his comfort was a piece of white silver falling on the beggar's broken rice bowl. The beggar was going crazy. He has never seen so much money in his life. This money is enough for him to buy a house and land, and then marry a big-ass wife. No. I want to go to the opium shop first and take a sip of the genuine fuchsia ointment. I will no longer use an iron pipe to smoke other people's smoke. Thinking of this beggar, he almost wished he had 2 or 3 mouths to praise the god of wealth in front of him. It's not enough to repeat what I just said 3 times. In the end, the little bit of survival in my stomach is really gone, so I might as well. You are my grandpa, grandpa. The dramatic scene interrupted Enratat's speech, and also caused those who were about to follow Enratat's description to enter the kingdom of heaven, and their thoughts were pulled back. Seeing such a ridiculous scene, everyone couldn't help laughing. Su Tong shook his head, with only disappointment in his eyes. When he dropped the first piece of silver, he used the life icon and saw a slight change in the beggar's fate. When he dropped the second piece of silver, the beggar's fate seemed to have begun to develop for the better, but there seemed to be some hidden dangers. When he dropped the third piece of silver, there was only a cloud of smoke above the beggar's head. A big hand came out of the smoke. There were countless skulls in the palm of the big hand, which was firmly grasped on the beggar's head. The palm full of skeletons seemed to be provocative and laughed lowly at Su Tong, as if he was mocking him and trying to change the fate of a beggar. Seeing this, Su Tong became a little unhappy and continued to leave a piece of silver in the begging bowl. But the laughter of the skeletons grew harsher. Su Tong continued to throw away, his eyes gradually becoming colder. 1 ingot of silver, 2 ingots of silver, 3 ingots of silver. Looking at the white silver falling into the bowl, the beggar's mind was already spinning. He always dreamed of money falling from the sky, but one day when his dream came true, the beggar suddenly found himself at a loss. He knelt in front of Su Tong, kowtowed repeatedly, and even called him grandpa, daddy, and finally, woof woof woof. The people around him started to laugh, and their eyes gradually became weird, until Su Tong stopped throwing away money and started throwing away banknotes, 100 taels at a time. Everyone's eyes and expressions also followed the amount of silver, changing their emotions rapidly. From playful to weird. From weird to shocking. Then to envy, even jealousy. But what they didn't know was that the beggar's inner emotions were also changing. From joy to ecstasy to shock, until now, only fear remains. It seemed that every time a silver note fell, it was as if a hand was holding his throat, making him feel inexplicably afraid. Why are you giving me so much money for no reason? Do you want me to do something? Or do you want my life? But my life is not worth so much money. Faced with the sudden fear, the beggar suddenly screamed and got up from the ground, stood up and ran without even taking a grain of silver. As he ran, he shouted, "I don't want it anymore, I don't want it anymore, I don't want it anymore." Su Tong was stunned for a moment. When he saw the destiny number on the beggar's head, he found that the destiny number had returned to its original appearance. The gray smoke cloud and the skeleton hand seemed to be torn apart invisibly. Picking up the silver on the ground again, Su Tong felt a little confused. I can change the fate of so many people, why can't I change the fate of even a beggar? This kind of confusion even makes people have self-doubt for a while. It's like Song Zier ran up to a fat man named Kua Shui and said, "I am willing to marry you and give you a big villa." As a result, he was rejected ruthlessly by Guo Shui. "Don't try to trick me into paying off the mortgage with you." Well, that's not really an appropriate metaphor. But Su Tong's current mood is no different from Song Zier's. In the end, he failed to change the fate of a beggar. This really shocked him and made him fall into a kind of self-doubt. "My good friend, although I was happy to welcome you, you ruined one of my sermons. Unlitate stepped forward and said to Su Tong with a dark face. Su Tong spread his hands helplessly. As you can see, I am trying to practice generosity and dedication, and accidentally interrupting your sermon is something I never thought of. Unlitat curled his lips. There is no doubt that you have never disappointed God in terms of generosity. But there are many ways to be generous, such as donating money to the church. This can make the glory of God shine brighter and illuminate the hearts of more lost lambs. Giving money to others is kindness, only giving money to the church is considered a donation. Thank you, Lord Bishop. In fact, this is exactly what I thought, but the premise is that the church needs to be built as soon as possible. When talking about this topic, Unlitat looked very helpless. If you want to rebuild the church, money alone is not enough, especially in this sensitive period. Even if you want to recruit a group of craftsmen at a high price, it is very difficult. After hearing Unlitat's complaint, Su Tong said that the matter was not difficult and that he could ask the bosses of casinos, opium dens, and even J-parlors in Foreigner Street to help. If they are unwilling, revoke their legal rights in the foreign areas and drive them out of the foreign areas. Well, that's a great offer. Enriton nodded, feeling that Master Ma was not as stupid as he had heard in the capital. Okay, let's talk about serious business. Seeing that Su Tong had finished speaking, his voice changed and he looked at Enritat seriously. Noticing the serious look on the face of this generous donor father, Enritat couldn't help but become nervous. This is China. Su Tong said word by word. Enritat was stunned for a moment and nodded. But that demon called Lilith has been pestering me lately. Are you sure that when the church is built, will I really be able to receive protection from distant gods? What I mean is, whether the gods or demons you talk about, in our Eastern mythology system, their power, seems a bit weak. After hearing Su Tong's words, Unlitat frowned. If anyone else had said that, he would have summoned Channa without hesitation and smashed the man into a pulp with her metallic steam fist. But unfortunately the man in front of him is Ma Hongwen, his biggest financial backer father. So he could only press down and patiently explain, I understand your worries, but please believe me, the relationship between gods is not as simple as you think. As long as you meet the opportunity of the gods will be able to connect with you. Opportunity. Su Tong captured these two words very keenly. Yes, as I just said, human beings cannot decide their own origins, but they can choose their own ending. Justice, kindness, sacrifice, and even your generosity, etc. will all be opportunities for the gods to call you. Enritat explained patiently. Su Tong thought for a while, as if digesting the information in Unlitat's words, but another picture still appeared in his mind. Blood and corpses, and the protagonist of the corpse is himself. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 405. Master, it's too cold. Wear more clothes. Grandma personally told me to take good care of you before leaving the capital. Before dawn, Su Tong got up early to prepare for work. Liro personally changed Su Tong's clothes and asked her servants to bring hot water and mouthwash tea. Since the eldest grandma left Beijing with some servants, Liro has begun to learn to manage the affairs of the family. Although she stumbled, in general no one dared to stumble Liro. After all, she was the maid in the young master's room. No one knows what kind of temper the young master has. If he blows a few winds on his ears, it's a disaster just thinking about it. After I go out, you should be careful. Don't open the door unless you are an acquaintance. There are a lot of rats outside recently. The rats Su Tong mentioned were naturally not the rats controlled by Ji Xiang. Although the atmosphere in the court has relaxed recently, there are already unknown waves of spies near my home. The existence of these people seems to be to monitor themselves at all times, for fear that they will slip away under their noses. According to the reports of Ji Xiang's younger brothers, some of these spies were from the Xiang family, some from Prince Gong's palace, and even some from the palace. There are also some people in the world who are confused and don't know where they come from. In short, I am now a piece of cake that everyone wants to take a bite of. After giving Lero instructions, Su Tong went out early. Stepping out of the door with one foot, more than a dozen pairs of eyes all around were staring at him. Su Tong curled his lips, walked to the stall at the door, picked up a pancake, ate it and walked toward the palace. Gone. Seeing Su Tong leave, several men wearing straw hats at the breakfast stall raised their heads. The person has left. Let's go back and report to the leader first. With that said, several people stood up and started to leave. Hey! You haven't paid me yet. When the breakfast vendor saw these people leaving, he quickly stopped them. Money? Didn't he give it too? One person asked, pointing at Su Tong's back. The hawker curled his lips and said, he is our god of wealth. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here to serve you. As soon as the vendor said this, all the people eating around him stopped holding their chopsticks in an instant. Several people blushed even more, quickly dropped a bunch of copper coins and left in dejection. A few people walked on the front foot, but those on the back foot dropped their money and left. Why stay here if you don't leave? Even the vendors know they are spies, so why bother pretending? On the other hand, after Su Tong entered the palace, he poked his head out and found that the eldest princess was rarely absent today. After thinking about it, he stepped up to the second floor. Take out the key and open the room door. Under an oil lamp, Fu Anning was sitting there naked and writing something furiously. When he heard the movement, he put down the pen in his hand and turned back to Su Tong. Didn't I tell you not to come when you have nothing to do? Find me. Su Tong closed the door, walked to Fu Anning, moved a chair and sat down, and then took out a food box from behind. Open the wine and food that are prepared inside. Fu Anning's eyes slowed down when he saw the food and wine. Sir, you are proficient in yin and yang bagua and divination and feng shui. There is one thing I want to ask you. Su Tong said and handed Fu Anning a glass of wine. Humph, tell me. Fu Anning sneered and took it, but didn't drink it. It wasn't until he watched Su Tong raise his glass as a sign of respect that he would drink it first, that he took a small sip to make sure there was nothing unusual before drinking it in one gulp. I've also been learning how to count plum blossoms recently. I had some small achievements and thought I was almost done until I met a beggar yesterday. Su Tong briefly explained the matter, but concealed the matter of his own life ikemen. Tell me, I obviously wanted to do good things, but why did the beggar go crazy in the end? Hearing this, Fu Anning grinned, losing all shame. When Fu Anning smiled, his mouth was particularly big, which made him look a little scary. You don't even understand that God can be deceived or not. If you change a person's destiny out of good intentions or malicious intentions, God can turn a blind eye, but if you are determined to compete with God, there will be absolutely no good results. Fu Anning turned around and took out a book called Ma Qian Lesson from the bookshelf, opened a few pages, and showed it to Su Tong. I saw 4 words written on it. 10 traditions. There are so many Yugzhu masters in the world. I am only counting the end of 10,000 years. You see, the 10 emperors of the Daitong dynasty have already been calculated by others, but why has no Yugzhu master come forward to change this result? Because God cannot be deceived. Since ancient times, none of those who tried to change their destiny against heaven had a happy ending, and no one could change their destiny against heaven. Doing something you know you can't do is cheating. Although Fu Anning's character is not that good, in the professional field, he is definitely one of the top masters today. With a few simple words, Su Tong roughly understood why he failed. You kid is learning the art of yi. I advise you to be careful. Everyone understands the truth, but there are always some people who overestimate their abilities and go against heaven. This is because they themselves are sometimes deluded, which is the same as the knowledge in Buddhism. Just like the obstacles, I don't know why I am doing this, so I am determined to walk towards death. This can be regarded as Fuan Ning's little advice. Thank you for clarifying my doubts, sir. When Su Tong asked for the reason, he felt relieved. He got up and went downstairs without staying any longer. After walking downstairs, the eldest princess has not come back yet. Su Tong sat on the chair and waited, but as soon as he sat down, he saw Li 11 walking in with his head lowered. Eh? What's wrong with you? Seeing the bruises on Li 11's face, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, suppressed the smile that rose at the corners of his mouth, and asked, pretending to be concerned. No, it's okay. I had a few quarrels with others and had a fight. It's okay. It's okay. Li 11 didn't dare to look up. Su Tong looked solemn, slapped the table, stood up and walked to Li 11, who dares to beat you? Is it the eunuch in the palace? Come on, I will take you back to beat you. As he spoke, he reached out and took Li 11's arm and walked out. No, not really. Li 11 waved his hands repeatedly, wanting to shake Su Tong's hand away, but he didn't dare. However, Su Tong's hand fell on his wound impartially, causing his lips to tremble in pain, making him unable to even speak. You really don't need my help? Brother. Su Tong let go of Li 11's arm, which made Li 11 breathe a sigh of relief, but then slapped him on the back. Li 11 almost lost his breath this time. Gao Zhou's punch hit him on the back last night, and now his whole back is still swollen. No, really no need. Li 11 swayed a few times, quickly stood up, looked back at Su Tong and said, Brother Ma, are you free the day after tomorrow? The night after tomorrow? Su Tong thought for a while, shook his head and said, no time. Where is the day after tomorrow? No, I made an appointment to go visit the brothel. That. Li 11 opened her mouth, and Su Tong said directly, I don't have time the day after tomorrow. I want to study at home. Studying makes me happy. Li 11. Well, I actually have nothing to do the day after tomorrow. What are you going to do? Seeing Li 11's face getting paler, Su Tong stopped teasing him and asked Li 11 what he wanted to do. Phew. Li 11's face finally looked much better after hearing this, and he hurriedly said, I plan to invite some of our brothers to get together. Juju. Yes, I want to leave the capital, so I plan to get together before leaving. You have to leave the capital. Su Tong looked at Li 11 very unexpectedly, with confusion and reluctance in his eyes. Li 11 looked at the look in Su Tong's eyes and couldn't help but feel stabbed in his heart. He lowered his head involuntarily, not daring to look into Su Tong's eyes. Brother Ma, the capital is too chaotic. I want to go out for a walk. I heard that there are many foreigners in Tianjin. I plan to find an opportunity to go to Tianjin and take a look. Li 11 made up an excuse at random, but it couldn't be said to be completely false. At least the fact that he left the capital was true. Oh. Su Tong sighed, rummaged in his pocket, and took out 5 or 6 banknotes. I don't know if you have this idea. You don't have that much money with you when you go out. You should take it first. If you want to be transferred to Tianjin, you need to take care of it. You can use it first. If there is not enough, I will get it for you. As he spoke, he put the banknote into Li 11's hand. Brother Ma. Looking at the banknote falling on his hand, Li 11's nose felt hot. Stop being pretentious, we are good brothers, isn't our lifelong friendship worth some money? Su Tong's face was stern, and Li 11 couldn't help but patted him on the shoulder and said sincerely, promise me to be a good person. After saying that, Su Tong waved his hand and walked out the door. It wasn't until he walked out of the door that Su Tong couldn't help but smile on his face. What a perfect performance. Li 11 watched his back shaking slightly from time to time, but in his mind, he couldn't help but recall the image of Ma Hongwen holding back tears. Suddenly, Li 11's eyes became blurred. He raised his head and looked in the direction of Sinning Palace. With white hair and snow falling, on the steps outside Sinning Palace, stood an old eunuch with a face full of scabies and pustules, and a sinister air between his brows. But this eunuch was wearing a brown second-grade official uniform, holding a whisk in his hand, and wearing a special three-eyed feather on his vermilion official hat. That was the pinnacle of power that all the eunuchs in the entire Forbidden City aspired to, and their power even exceeded all the eunuchs in the Datong dynasty. When he first entered the palace, he took a distant look at this powerful eunuch. At that time, he only had two words in his eyes: envy. But now, this envy is gone. In order to escape the mission sex pursuit, he had no choice but to hide in the palace. Using a man's dignity in exchange for royal protection was a very good deal, at least at the time. But now, this decadent dynasty can no longer provide him with long-term protection. The only thing Li 11 could do was to leave and take the best interests on board the broken ship before it sank. So. Sorry, Brother Marco, I just want to live.